I thought I had the perfect marriage, until I uncovered my wife's secret affair within the walls of my own hotel. What followed was a spiral of betrayal, a plan for revenge, and a journey that led me to a completely unexpected new beginning. My name's Mark, I'm 38, and I've been married to my wife, Anna, for 8 years. We have a 6-year-old daughter, Lily, and on the surface, everything seemed perfect. I run a small but successful hotel, and Anna has been a stay-at-home mom, looking after Lily and keeping the house in order. I always thought we were a strong couple. Sure, things weren't as passionate as they were in the early days, but we had built a life together, a comfortable one. I was proud of the business I'd grown, and I loved coming home to see Anna and Lily. For the most part, I thought Anna was happy, too. She seemed content, always so focused on making sure Lily was taken care of and that the house was running smoothly. But over the past few months, something had started to feel off. It was nothing dramatic, just little things that made me wonder if everything was okay. Anna had always been good at managing the house, but lately, she seemed more distracted. I'd come home from a long day at the hotel, expecting to see her in the kitchen or playing with Lily, but sometimes she'd be nowhere to be found. And when she was there, she'd seem distant, her mind elsewhere. I tried to brush it off at first, telling myself she was just tired or maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed. Taking care of a child and managing a house is no small task, and I knew that. But then there were other things, like the way she'd suddenly be glued to her phone, typing away with this intense focus, only to quickly lock the screen the moment I walked into the room. And then there were the times when she'd tell me she needed to run errands, only to be gone for hours without a clear explanation of where she'd been. It started to bother me, but I didn't want to be that paranoid husband, so I tried to ignore it. I had my own work to focus on, and I didn't want to create problems where there might not be any. But that uneasy feeling kept creeping back, and I couldn't shake it. I had no idea then just how deep this would go, or how my entire world was about to be turned upside down. A few weeks after I'd started noticing those small changes in Anna, she sat me down one evening after Lily had gone to bed. She looked a little nervous, which wasn't like her, and after a pause, she told me, "I've been thinking, now that Lily's in school, maybe it's time I go back to work." At first, I was a bit surprised. We hadn't really talked about her working since Lily was born, and I'd assumed Anna was happy being at home. But I could see that she was serious, that she'd given this a lot of thought. "I think it would be good for me," she said, her eyes lighting up a bit. "It's not that I don't love being with Lily and keeping the house in order, but I want to feel like I'm doing something more, you know." I nodded, feeling relieved that she'd opened up to me about it. Maybe she had been bored or restless, and I hadn't even noticed. "I get it," I told her. "Actually, if you're interested, why don't you come work at the hotel? I'm sure there are plenty of things you could help with, and I could really use someone I trust around the place." Her face lit up at the idea. "Are you sure? I'd love to help, but I don't want you to feel like you're doing me a favor." "It's not a favor," I said, smiling. "Honestly, it'd be great to have you there. I think you'd bring a nice touch to the place." And that's how Anna started working as an assistant to the hotel manager. She was fantastic at it, too. She had a natural talent for organizing things and interacting with people, and soon enough, she was taking on more responsibilities, working closely with guests and handling some of the daily tasks that kept the hotel running smoothly. At first, everything was perfect. Anna seemed happier, more engaged, and she'd throw herself into her work with this newfound enthusiasm. She started dressing up more, choosing stylish, professional outfits that suited her role at the hotel. It was like she'd found a new side of herself, a confidence and spark that hadn't been there before. Seeing her so fulfilled made me happy. I figured that the change of pace and the sense of purpose she got from working were just what she needed. I was glad I could give her that, and I liked having her around at the hotel. It felt like we were working together towards something, like we were a team. For a little while, everything felt right again. But I didn't know that her new purpose would soon take a dark turn, or how my attempt to support her would eventually tear our lives apart. Things seemed to be going well for a few weeks. Anna was settling into her role at the hotel, and from what I could see, she was doing a great job. Guests seemed to like her, and she had this charm that worked well with the staff. I thought things were finally clicking into place, and that she'd found the balance she'd been looking for. Then, one afternoon, our hotel's chief manager, Daniel, stopped by my office. He had a serious look on his face, and after a bit of small talk, he brought up Anna. "Listen, Mark, I don't mean to complain, but we've had a few issues with Anna lately," he started, looking a bit hesitant. I didn't want to bring it up until I was sure, but it's becoming a pattern. I was taken aback. I'd thought she was excelling, but Daniel's expression said otherwise. "Issues? What kind of issues are we talking about?" I asked, genuinely surprised. He shifted in his seat. "Well, for starters, she's been absent at times when she should be around. I've assigned her tasks, simple ones, like preparing documents for check-ins or meeting with suppliers, and she'll be gone for a long time without a clear reason. A task that should take 20 minutes sometimes takes an hour or more, and when she comes back, there's rarely an explanation. When I ask, she just says she got caught up or had to make a call." It was confusing. I'd seen Anna work well and handle things efficiently, so I couldn't understand why Daniel was saying this. Is it possible she's just still getting the hang of things? I suggested, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's taking her time to get things right. Daniel nodded thoughtfully but didn't look convinced. Maybe. But it's not just that. Sometimes she's not even at her desk, and no one seems to know where she is. Look, Mark, I don't want to cause any trouble, but this has been happening often enough that it's starting to raise questions among the staff. After our conversation, I was left feeling unsettled. Part of me thought Daniel might be exaggerating or perhaps even had a personal grudge against Anna. But I couldn't ignore that he'd taken the time to bring this to my attention. So, that evening, when I got home, I decided to ask Anna about it casually. "Hey, Anna, I talked to Daniel today," I began, trying to keep my tone light. "He mentioned that you've been away from your desk a lot, and some tasks are taking longer than expected. Is everything going all right? Do you feel like you're managing okay?" Anna looked surprised, then a bit defensive. "I'm doing fine, Mark," she replied quickly. I don't know why Daniel would say that. I always complete my tasks, and if I take a little longer, it's only because I want things to be perfect. I have no idea why he'd say anything otherwise. Maybe he just doesn't like that I'm learning quickly. Her reaction didn't sit quite right with me, but I wanted to trust her. Maybe she really was putting in extra effort, and Daniel was just being overly critical. "All right," I said, trying to keep the peace. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. After that conversation, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. But I decided not to jump to conclusions. Instead, I would keep an eye on things, observe her work myself, and see if there was anything to Daniel's complaints. I wasn't going to judge her based on someone else's perspective, but I also needed to know if something was slipping through the cracks. After that conversation with Daniel, the doubt started to creep in. I didn't want to believe that Anna was slacking off or, worse, hiding something from me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands and keep a closer eye on her tasks, just to see if Daniel's complaints had any basis. The next morning, I went to my office early and pulled up the hotel's security footage from the past few days. I wanted to see how Anna was spending her time at work. At first, everything seemed normal. She'd be in the office, working at her desk, organizing files, and handling the paperwork assigned to her. But then something caught my eye. One day, while she was supposed to be working on a batch of documents, I noticed her stepping out of the office and heading down the hall toward the guest rooms. She stopped at one of the rooms, knocked softly, and after a moment, the door opened, and she slipped inside. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was nothing. Maybe the guest had asked for something specific, and Anna was just handling it as part of her work. But as I continued to watch, I saw her doing it again. And again. Each time, she'd spend longer inside the rooms than seemed necessary, sometimes coming out after 20 minutes, sometimes closer to an hour. It didn't seem like the usual interaction you'd expect between a hotel employee and a guest. Anna was new to the position, so technically, she shouldn't have been handling direct guest matters at all. That was typically the chief manager's job, especially when it came to customer complaints or specific requests. The assistant's role was more focused on paperwork and internal tasks, particularly during those early weeks of training. Still, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Daniel had been involving her in some customer service tasks to help her gain experience. It wasn't completely out of the question, and in a way, I thought it might even be a good thing. If she was learning quickly, maybe that explained why she'd been so absorbed in her work. But the more I watched, the more uneasy I felt. I couldn't ignore the odd pattern I was seeing on the footage. Anna's trips to guest rooms were frequent, almost daily, and they were far longer than what seemed necessary. It didn't make sense. After watching a few more days' worth of footage, I decided to get to the bottom of it. Later that day, I approached Daniel casually, as though I was just checking in on how things were going. "Hey, I wanted to ask, have you been involving Anna in guest issues?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "I noticed she's been spending a lot of time with guests, and I thought maybe you'd been giving her a little extra responsibility." Daniel looked at me, genuinely confused. "No, I haven't asked her to handle any guest-related issues," he said, shaking his head. "Actually, I've specifically been keeping her tasks limited to internal work and paperwork, especially since she's only been here a couple of weeks. It's way too soon for her to be handling guest interactions on her own." I stood there, feeling a wave of confusion and something darker starting to build in the pit of my stomach. If Daniel hadn't assigned her to handle any guest matters, then what was Anna doing in those rooms? Why was she spending so much time with the guests? I thanked Daniel and left, my mind racing. Something wasn't right, and the more I thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit. If Anna was lying about her duties, then I needed to find out why, and what she was really doing during those long, unexplained absences. That evening, when I got home, I decided to confront Anna. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the conflicting stories from her and Daniel were weighing on me. If Daniel hadn't assigned her to guest matters, then why was she spending so much time in the rooms? I needed to hear her side. As we sat down after dinner, I casually brought it up. "Hey, Anna, I was just curious. Daniel mentioned you've been doing a lot of good work with documents and organizing things. But I noticed you've been spending some time with the guests too. Are you handling client issues already?" Anna nodded without missing a beat. "Yeah, Daniel's been involving me in some guest interactions," she said, looking perfectly at ease. "He said it's part of my training to get familiar with all areas of the hotel. I thought it was a bit early too, but he insisted that I'd be good at it." I sat there, trying to process her answer, but it only left me more confused. Daniel had told me, clear as day, that he hadn't involved her in guest matters, that he was intentionally keeping her focused on internal work. And yet here Anna was, confidently telling me the exact opposite, that she was being trained in client relations at Daniel's insistence. A cold feeling settled in my chest as I tried to make sense of it. Who was lying to me? Was Daniel exaggerating her issues to cover up some mistake of his own? Or was Anna lying, creating this story to explain away her frequent visits to the guests' rooms? I didn't want to believe either of them was capable of deception, but this didn't add up. "Interesting," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "That's good experience for you, I guess. It's just. Daniel didn't mention that to me. I thought he was keeping you focused on documents and internal tasks for now." She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, just kept her easy smile. "Oh, maybe he just forgot to mention it to you," she said smoothly. He's probably swamped, and he knows you trust him to handle the staff. I nodded, though I was struggling to keep my expression steady. Everything she said sounded plausible, but something just felt wrong. If Daniel were lying, what reason would he have? And if Anna was lying, well, I didn't even want to go down that road. I'd never had a reason to doubt her, but the way she was brushing off my questions left a gnawing feeling in the back of my mind. As I headed to bed that night, my thoughts were racing. I had two conflicting stories, and there was no clear way to know who was telling the truth. But one thing was certain, I needed to keep my eyes open. The next day, I made a decision. I was going to keep an eye on both Anna and Daniel. I wanted to see firsthand what was really happening, who was telling the truth, and, more importantly, if there was anything I was missing. So I cleared my schedule, stayed close to the security room, and watched their movements in real time on the hotel's cameras. The day started off as any other. Daniel was in his office, going through the usual morning briefings with the staff, assigning tasks, and following up with me about upcoming events. I watched carefully, hoping to catch any sign of him giving Anna instructions to handle guest matters, but he didn't. In fact, he spent most of the morning focused on meetings, staff issues, and logistics. Anna, meanwhile, was stationed at her desk, handling paperwork. She was going through files, organizing them, and generally doing the work I'd expected her to be doing all along. It was almost a relief to see her working normally, like everything was okay, and I even began to wonder if I'd been overthinking things. But then, just after noon, Anna got up from her desk and headed down the hall. I noticed she wasn't carrying any paperwork, nor did she have any clear purpose as she made her way toward the guest rooms. My gut twisted, but I kept watching, reminding myself that there could still be a reasonable explanation. But as I observed, she entered one of the rooms on the third floor, room 315, to be exact. I checked in with Daniel's office to see if he'd sent her on a task, but he was still deep in a meeting, and he hadn't left his desk since the morning. I hesitated, feeling a mix of dread and determination. Whatever was going on, I needed to know. So I made my way up to room 315, my heart pounding as I tried to keep my steps light. When I reached the door, I listened for any sounds inside. There was nothing at first, just silence, and then I heard a low murmur, voices, too quiet to make out, but unmistakably there. I knocked on the door, forcing my voice to stay calm as I said, "Housekeeping." I knew Anna wouldn't expect me. She thought I was busy managing the hotel and would have no reason to suspect I was onto her. There was a brief silence, and then I heard footsteps approaching. The door opened slightly, and Anna's face appeared in the gap. Her expression shifted from surprise to something like fear as she saw me standing there. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she stammered, glancing nervously behind her. After I knocked, the door opened just a crack, and a man appeared, wrapped in nothing but a towel. He looked at me with a casual, slightly annoyed expression. "Housekeeping isn't needed, thanks," he said, starting to close the door. The whole scene felt surreal. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I processed what was happening. I had no authority to enter a room if a guest refused, so I forced myself to stay calm, taking in every detail. But before I could decide what to say next, a voice from inside the room changed everything. "Come back here, let the cleaning wait," the voice called out, laughing lightly. It was Anna's voice, clear as day. My heart sank as I heard it, and every suspicion I'd buried for the past few weeks crashed over me in an instant. I fixed my eyes on the man at the door, my voice cold and unyielding. "Move. I need to go into the room." The man's expression faltered as he stepped back, likely realizing the gravity of the situation. I pushed the door open, walking past him, and there, on the bed, was Anna, completely naked, a look of shock spreading across her face as she saw me standing there. The shock in Anna's eyes faded quickly, replaced by something almost like defiance, as if she knew there was no use hiding anymore. I struggled to keep my voice steady, though the anger bubbling inside was close to boiling over. "So, Anna," I said, barely keeping my composure, "What exactly have you been working on these past couple of weeks? What could you possibly be lacking? You have everything, our home, our cars, our family. Our relationship has always been close to ideal, or at least I thought it was." She looked away, biting her lip, before finally meeting my gaze. "I wanted something new, something different," she admitted, a hint of guilt in her voice. "I thought about asking you for an open relationship, but I figured you'd say no. So I did it this way, hoping you wouldn't find out." Hearing those words made my blood run cold. The betrayal was bad enough, but her explanation was like twisting the knife. "Something new. You decided to throw everything away because you wanted something different. And you thought I'd never find out?" She tried to say something, but I cut her off, my voice rising. "Don't bother coming home, Anna. I'll see you in court." With that, I turned and left the room, not wanting to hear any more of her excuses. After walking out of that room, my mind was set. Anna's betrayal wasn't something I could simply overlook, and her casual justification of it cut deeper than I ever thought possible. She had trampled over everything we'd built, every promise we'd made to each other, and I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. The first step was swift and decisive. I removed her from the hotel immediately. I instructed security to escort her out, ensuring she wouldn't set foot in the place I'd worked tirelessly to build. There was something deeply satisfying in knowing that she was being forced out of the world I had created, the one she had so thoughtlessly tarnished. As she was escorted out, any trace of the partnership I thought we had was wiped clean. But removing her from the hotel was only the beginning. The very next day, I met with my attorney to begin the divorce proceedings. I was focused and resolute as I explained everything to him, leaving out no detail. I filed on grounds of infidelity, with a clear intent to secure my share of our assets, our home, our finances, and, most importantly, custody of our daughter. I couldn't imagine letting Anna's impulsive choices impact Lily's life. Filing the papers didn't feel like enough, though. The hurt, the humiliation, it demanded something more. I started piecing together every bit of evidence I had. Text messages, unexplained absences, security footage from the hotel, anything that would lay bare the extent of her deception. The video alone spoke volumes, capturing her frequent, unexplained visits to guests' rooms, times when she should have been focused on her role, times she lied about meeting clients. My goal wasn't simply to win a case, it was to reveal just how little respect she'd held for our life together. As word of the affair began to ripple through our friends and family, I could see how the image she'd built around herself was unraveling. Anna had always taken pride in being the perfect wife and devoted mother, the cornerstone of our family. Now, people could see her for who she truly was, and there was no going back. In those first few days, I felt a strange clarity. Everything had been laid bare, no more secrets, no more lies. Anna had tried to live two lives, but in the end, she had no one to blame but herself. The day of our divorce court hearing finally arrived. I felt a strange mix of nerves and relief as I stepped into the courthouse. This was it, the moment that would decide the future of everything I'd worked for, and more importantly, the future of my daughter's life. Anna arrived with a polished look, as if she were preparing for some high-stakes negotiation rather than answering for her betrayal. But I wasn't fooled by her composure. I knew exactly what she'd done, and I had all the evidence to back it up. As the hearing began, my attorney laid out everything. He presented the carefully gathered evidence, the late-night texts, the unexplained hours spent in guest rooms, the hotel footage. Each piece chipped away at the image she tried to project, leaving only the undeniable facts of her affair. It was clear to everyone in that room just how deeply she'd violated our trust and our marriage. When it was her turn to respond, Anna tried to defend herself, speaking of unmet needs and desires for independence. She even tried to sway the court by claiming she was still an attentive mother and deserved joint custody. Her lawyer played on every angle, trying to portray her as someone simply seeking happiness, but it felt hollow, almost desperate. Then came my final argument. I made it clear that her choices had not only damaged our marriage but had shown a fundamental lack of stability and responsibility. I fought for full custody of our daughter, citing Anna's deception and her willingness to sacrifice her family's well-being for her own fleeting desires. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. I was granted primary custody of Lily, with Anna allowed visitation under strict guidelines. We divided our assets in a way that reflected her actions, and the judge was firm about the impact her affair had on the case's outcome. Leaving the courthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I knew there was still a long road ahead, one filled with new challenges as I adjusted to life as a single parent. But I also felt a new sense of freedom and strength. Anna had made her choices, and now she was left to live with them. For me, though, the future finally looked clear. It was time to rebuild, not from the ruins of our marriage, but from a place of newfound resilience. After the divorce was finalized, I knew I needed a clean slate. The house I'd shared with Anna, filled with memories that were now tainted, felt like a cage more than a home. So, I made the decision to sell it. The process was bittersweet, but every step felt like another layer of the past peeling away, leaving room for something new. With the house on the market, I began planning a move out of state. I wanted to leave everything behind, the neighborhood, the familiar faces, the places where I'd once thought we were building a life together. I needed a change not just for me but for Lily. I wanted her to grow up with a fresh start, away from the whispers and the painful memories of the life Anna had shattered. Before leaving, I arranged to transfer the day-to-day management of the hotel to Daniel, our chief manager. Over the years, he'd proven to be competent and trustworthy, someone who truly understood the business. I worked closely with him for a few weeks, ensuring he felt comfortable with the new responsibilities. Once I saw the hotel running smoothly under his supervision, I made the shift to remote management. I'd still come back from time to check on things, but with Daniel at the helm, I felt confident that the hotel would thrive. Moving day came quicker than I expected, and soon, I was driving out of town with Lily in the back seat, watching as everything I once knew faded in the rearview mirror. We settled into a quiet town in a different state, a place with open skies and a slower pace. It was exactly what I needed, a chance to rebuild my life from the ground up, without the ghosts of the past lurking around every corner. I stayed in touch with Daniel, checking in regularly and occasionally making trips back to ensure the hotel was on track. Each time I visited, I was struck by how Daniel had handled everything seamlessly. He'd not only kept the business steady but even found ways to improve operations and bring in new guests. His dedication allowed me to truly enjoy my new life with Lily, knowing that the hotel was in safe hands. With each passing day, the pain of the betrayal faded a little more, replaced by a sense of freedom and purpose. I was building something entirely my own, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt wide open. A few months after settling into our new life, things had finally started to feel normal again. Lily was adjusting well to her new school, and I was finding peace in our quiet, simpler life. It felt like we were truly moving forward. But then, one crisp autumn morning, something arrived that brought the past crashing back. I checked the mail, expecting the usual, bills, advertisements, maybe a letter or two. But there, nestled among the stack, was a thick envelope with handwriting I recognized immediately. It was Anna's. I hadn't heard from her in months. Aside from a few brief interactions about visitation details, she'd respected my decision to go our separate ways. But now, here was this letter, staring back at me, weighted with whatever she wanted to say. I opened it slowly, feeling a mix of anxiety and curiosity. Inside was a handwritten letter, several pages long, and as I began to read, her words threw me off balance. She wasn't writing to ask for forgiveness or to justify her choices. Instead, she explained that she'd recently been diagnosed with a serious illness, something she hadn't seen coming. Anna's letter went on to say that the reality of her diagnosis had forced her to reflect on her mistakes, on the life she'd shattered. She admitted that the affair had been her way of escaping a happiness she hadn't been able to appreciate until it was gone. Now, facing her own mortality, she said she wished she'd made different choices. Then came the unexpected request. She asked if she could see Lily more often, maybe even have her for an extended stay during her treatment. She wanted to reconnect, to find some peace with her daughter, and she said it would mean everything to her. I sat there, the letter heavy in my hands, trying to process her words. The anger, the betrayal, all those emotions rushed back, mixing with something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Empathy, maybe, or just a reluctant understanding of how life's twists can bring even the most defiant people to their knees. I didn't know what to do, or how to respond. The pain she'd caused was still raw, but this changed everything. I sat with Anna's letter for hours, reading and rereading each line, trying to make sense of everything she had written. Part of me wanted to ignore it entirely, to protect Lily from any more confusion or disruption. She had finally begun to feel at home in our new life, and I didn't want anything, or anyone, to throw that off balance. But another part of me felt the weight of Anna's words, her plea to reconnect with her daughter while she still had time. It was the first time she had asked for something that felt genuine since everything had fallen apart. I decided to take things slowly. I talked with Lily gently, bringing up her mother in a way that wouldn't alarm her, testing the waters to see how she felt. I didn't want to reveal too much or push her into anything, but Lily, in her innocent way, seemed eager to know more. She asked how her mom was, if she missed her, if we would ever visit her. Each question hit like a pang, but I realized that Lily's curiosity about her mother was stronger than I'd anticipated. So, after a lot of thought, I reached out to Anna. I told her that while I wasn't ready for an extended stay, I was willing to consider allowing her some extra time with Lily under supervised conditions. It wasn't easy, every fiber of me resisted opening that door even a crack. But I knew that this wasn't just about my feelings. Lily deserved to know her mother, and despite everything, Anna was still a part of her life. When Anna received my response, she was grateful, more emotional than I had ever heard her. We arranged for her to visit us in our new town, with the understanding that this was all about Lily and that her stay would be brief. She agreed without hesitation, her voice wavering with a kind of remorse that, for the first time, felt sincere. The day of the visit, I was tense, pacing the living room as I waited. When Anna arrived, she looked different, thinner, paler, with a weariness that hadn't been there before. She greeted Lily with an overwhelming tenderness, holding her close in a way that was both touching and heartbreaking. Lily, innocent and forgiving, hugged her mother back, her face lighting up with the joy of reunion. Seeing them together was unexpectedly emotional. I had spent so long harboring resentment and anger, yet watching Lily's happiness melted some of the hardness inside me. It wasn't easy, and the hurt was still there, but in that moment, I felt something close to forgiveness, not for Anna, but for the sake of giving Lily a chance at a relationship with her mother. As I watched them, I knew that whatever happened next, I'd made the right choice for our daughter's happiness, even if it wasn't easy for me. Life gradually started to settle, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I found peace. I had left the past behind and focused on the present, shaping a future that was finally my own. My daughter, Lily, was happy, and I finally felt free. Moving to a new town had been the right decision. Here, I could start fresh, away from the shadows of my old life. The first months after the move were challenging. We had to adjust to new surroundings, make new routines, and get comfortable with the unfamiliar, but over time, it became enjoyable. Lily adapted wonderfully to her new school, quickly made friends, and each day came home with a smile, sharing stories of her school adventures and new friendships. Seeing her so happy reassured me that moving away was the best choice I could have made. As for work, I'd transitioned the hotel to remote management, freeing up more time for Lily. My chief manager, Daniel, took on most of my responsibilities, and I could oversee things from a distance, only occasionally visiting to go over documents or discuss future plans. Daniel managed everything seamlessly, and knowing the business was in good hands gave me peace of mind. The hotel was thriving, and that allowed me to focus on the most important part of my life, Lily. In this new chapter, I'd met someone who changed everything. She came into my life at a time when I didn't know if I could trust again. But she was patient, gentle, and understood everything I'd been through. Our relationship grew naturally, step by step, and each moment together made me realize that love could be simple and genuine. For the first time, I felt truly seen, without judgment or the weight of past mistakes. When I proposed, it felt like a continuation of the new life I was building, a promise to create a future built on respect, trust, and love. Lily quickly warmed up to her, and it wasn't long before we became a family in every sense of the word. This wasn't just about moving forward, it was about moving forward with purpose, with someone who believed in building something meaningful alongside me. Surprisingly, Anna reacted calmly to the news of my engagement. Since her illness, she had changed significantly, shifting her focus to her health and her relationship with Lily. She no longer acted out of jealousy or tried to complicate things, she had found a kind of acceptance. Her priority now was to mend the bond with her daughter, and I had softened enough to let her. Our history was still there, but I could see she was trying to become a different person, humbled by what life had thrown at her. So, I allowed Anna to visit more frequently. I wasn't doing it for her, but for Lily. She deserved to have a relationship with her mother, no matter the mistakes Anna had made. Surprisingly, these visits turned out to be more peaceful than I expected. Anna's interactions with Lily were sincere, and she genuinely cherished the time they spent together. Gradually, my resentment faded. I came to see Anna as Lily's mother, rather than as the woman who'd hurt me. Viewing her this way allowed me to make peace with the past without holding on to bitterness. With each visit, I could see that Anna had been deeply affected by her experiences and the lessons they carried. Her life had changed, and she was trying to make amends in her own way. I had chosen to forgive, not because I had forgotten the pain, but because it allowed me to move forward without the baggage of resentment. Today, I'm standing on the edge of a new life with a new family, filled with gratitude for the lessons I learned along the way. Lily is thriving, and our home is filled with love and laughter once again. My fiancé has brought joy and light back into our lives, and I am ready to embrace every moment of this new beginning with her by my side. As for Anna, I no longer worry about her role in my life. She has her own journey to follow, focused on her health and her bond with Lily. In some ways, her presence in our lives has taken on a new meaning, a reminder of what was and a symbol of how far we've come. Whatever the future holds, I am ready for it, free of the shadows of the past and open to whatever comes next.